Okay, in this video I'm going to show you what I sent to the UK Supreme Court along with who I sent it to. So firstly, just to prove, well, you'll see what I'm proving here. This is the Royal Mail delivery tracking. So this one here is the proof of delivery. This should be sent to Lady Chief Justice Carr, but this is the photograph that is showing on the tracking history for that parcel. That's the delivery location, Mount Pleasant, WCD, whatever that is. But that is a strange photograph that they've provided as proof of delivery. But that's who it was addressed to. This here is the proof that this is Felipe Massa's barrister, Nick DeMarco of the Blackstone Chambers, as you can see there. That is 4 of the envelopes that I sent off were brown envelopes written like this with the address pictured like that. One was white bubble wrap. The one that was sent to Lady Chief Justice was like a white jiffy bag because that contained the details that I submitted of my personal claim, that my personal case that affected me, to the appeal court in Birmingham, which was then just returned to me with no explanation whatsoever. So this one is the proof of delivery to. See, this is again. I'm guessing must be the brown envelope down here. This is. I think that one is the one that has gone to the Supreme Court. You can't even read the address on that. This one is still in transit. That's the one that was addressed to Jeremy Corbyn to go to the Houses of Parliament. And this one is the one which, again, this is the picture they provided. So I'm guessing my letter is one of those 2 brown ones there. And if you look down here, Gray's Inn is where the barristers' chambers are for the FIA Formula One Eccleston's chambers for David Quest. So that's where that one has gone to. So delivered, as you can see, for the there's the 2 barristers. That one was supposed to be to Lady Chief Justice Carr. This is the one that should have ended up at the Supreme Court. And in terms of location, that is the location it should have been delivered to. So that's proof, as best as I can provide you, of what it is I've sent off in 5 deliveries to them places, and this is what they contained. Now, when I go through this, you need to be aware of this is not going to be what is typical of the kind of communication which we are conditioned to accept as being the normal way of doing things. But you see, this is their normal way of doing things, where people pretend to have integrity, pretend to be wearing the costumes, whether that be suits, whether that be wigs, whether that be capes, and then do things the proper way. And you'll see that their proper way is all fraudulent. So I'll call it out in blunt terms for exactly what it is. They won't like that. I don't care. All that matters is the truth. And I'm not going to be, I'll give them all due respect that they are due, and that is none, because they are filthy criminals, scum, seeking to protect perpetrators of crime. Absolute evil. So I'm going to go through this and demonstrate to you what it is I've sent. And I'm keeping this video to no longer than about 20 minutes long, so I might have to do this in sections. So what is taking place? The overview is that there is this case that has been taken to court. MASSA raised it, I believe, in the March of 2024. It finally got a hearing date in October 2025. You'll see what the timing of that is relevant relative to Bernie Ecclestone's suspended prison sentence. This is all a fraudulent contrivance. Now, it takes this long to actually get to court. Now we've got a backlog in our legal system, have we? And then it gets to court and they deliberate for over 3 days in court. A load of bollocks. All right. And I'll go through Judge J's 224-point summary of what it is he's got to consider during those 3 days before to determine whether it even can progress to some sort of trial. And then he's had to raise some points to the Supreme Court for them to decide on aspects of law. It's all a facade. Okay, it is all a facade. It's very simple. Renault cheated at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix by crashing one of their cars to enable their other car to have a much better chance of winning. That's cheating. That's corruption. When the FIA found out about that, when Bernie Ecclestone found out about that, because they're two separate entities, there's the brand of Formula One that Ecclestone was in charge of as CEO of that business, and the FIA, the governing body of the sport. When they found out that that cheating had taken place, they'd got an obligation to take the appropriate action, which was to disqualify Alonso from that race and to disqualify Renault from the entire season. They didn't do that, and instead of doing that, what they tried to do was cover it up. And the reason they tried to cover it up was to protect the monetary value of the brand of Formula One, because that is Ecclestone's role. The FIA also have a vested interest in that because they achieve a significant part of their income via the proceeds of what Formula One generates. So they fraudulently covered up a crime within their sport, a sporting fraud. They covered it up for monetary value to protect the image of their show, their brand. That's a fraud. Okay, that is what they did. It emerged to the world in 2009 when Piquet Jr. lost his seat and then spilled the beans. He came out and said, yeah, they got me to crash on purpose. Then all the investigation, so-called, took place, and it became acknowledged that, yes, indeed, Renault did get him to crash. Briatore got banned, Pat Simmons got banned from the sport, supposedly lifetime bans, but then they were rescinded. And then, the world moved on. Alonso is still recorded as being the winner of that race. He was never had that stripped of him. Renault were never stripped from their position of 4th in the Constructors' Championship. Funny that, isn't it? But Ecclestone then gave an interview in 2023 after Abu Dhabi 2021, where he cast light. And the reason being, the narrative bubbled on for a long period of time after Abu Dhabi 2021 about obviously what an injustice that was, and that should have been Lewis Hamilton's 8th world title. And so you get the likes of Bernie Ecclestone essentially trying to undermine it by saying, well, actually, that one back there, he shouldn't have had that one anyway. So even if he should have got Abu Dhabi, he shouldn't have had that one, right? That's essentially the kind of narrative that is fundamental to why this even emerged in 2023 when Ecclestone gave that interview. He was seeking to undermine the accomplishments of Hamilton and kind of cast some murk on the situation where people are still outraged because Abu Dhabi 2021 was a clear fraud that the world doesn't really know about properly. But they basically try to condition people with the narrative. Well, even if he should have had that one, he shouldn't have had that one back in 2008. So they kind of balance each other out, don't they? Utter bollocks, right? Utter bollocks. But again, this forms part of it. But what also forms part of it is if they can get a ruling in a court of law to suggest that actually we can't bring this sort of thing to court to try to object to historic things that have happened in the sport, because that just opens a can of worms. So let's get the court to rule that this kind of case is ridiculous. They're not possible to raise these kind of challenges about historic results in sport. That's what really they're seeking. When the reality is, it's a crime. This is fraud. Okay. So what Ecclestone did in this interview in 2023 was admit that in the 2008 season, he and Max Mosley, the head of the FIA at the time, became aware that Piquet Jr. had been made to crash on purpose. Piquet Jr.'s father, Nelson Piquet Sr., he informed Ecclestone or Max Mosley that his son had been told he must crash in Singapore. What is reported is that they got to find out that in Brazil that year, which is the final race of the season. Now, the actual timing of when over the course of that race weekend they were informed of that, they'd have obviously got there. They used to get there on about the Thursday of the week. It used to be, I'm sure it used to be longer than just like a 3 day window at Formula One Grand Prix. Over recent years, we're used to the fact you get Friday for free practice 1 and 2, Saturday free practice 3 and qualifying, and then Sunday the race. I'm sure historically they used to have a longer period of time, but again, it doesn't really matter that much. But what I'm trying to say is, at some point during that period, now whether it was on the Thursday, the Friday, the Saturday, the Grand Prix would have been on the Sunday, whether it was before the Grand Prix, after that Grand Prix, or in the days preceding the Grand Prix, I don't know. That's not disclosed. But at that weekend, Eccleston and Max Mosley were told by PK Senior that his son had cheated. Now, if it turns out it was on the Thursday or Friday, there's slightly different connotations, okay? But we can find this out. You can actually just contact PK Senior and get his sworn testimony as to when this actually took place. Obviously, Bernie Eccleston's going to deny everything. He'll claim that he's forgotten it all now, because this is what fraudsters do. They'll claim to have forgot. They no longer know. All right? That's their form of defense. Denial. Yeah, sorry, I forgot. I don't know. So, they got to find out, and they purposefully covered it up. And it is said in the interview, which I've got a copy of the interview in here. This is the text of the F1 Insider. I've got the link to this. This is what was said by them. Where does it say? Here it goes. We decided not to do anything for the time being. We wanted to protect the sport and protect it from a huge scandal. That is why I persuaded my former pilot, Nelson Piquet, with angelic tongues to keep calm for the time being. Okay, so this was about him being made aware at that weekend in Brazil. Okay, so it says here, Max Mosley, the FIA president, and I were informed during the 2008 season about what had happened in the race in Singapore. Piquet Jr. told his father Nelson that he'd been asked by the team to deliberately drive into the wall at a certain point in time to trigger, and help his teammate Alonso. So Mosley and him were informed during the 2008 season. So there is, again, trying to actually get this information. Let me see if I. Here we go. This is also bullshit. Today, Eccleston takes a critical view of all this. We had the information in time to investigate the matter. According to the statutes, however, we would probably have had to cancel the race in Singapore under these conditions. That's a lie. That's a projection. This means it would have never taken place for the World Championship standing. Then Felipe Massa would have become the world champion and not Lewis Hamilton. The reality is, when you discover cheating, you don't void the event, just like when we saw Michael Schumacher purposely try to drive into Jacques Villeneuve. Cheating, yeah. What you don't do, you don't void the race, you disqualify Michael Schumacher, which is what they did. Okay, when you'd find out that McLaren were cheating when they'd got the blueprints of the Mercedes dying for Spygate, you didn't cancel the races, you didn't cancel the season, you just disqualified the cheating team from that season's championship for the Constructors' Championship, didn't you? So no, you don't disqualify the contests, right? You just disqualify the cheats. All right. So that is the. I'll put a link to the actual online article from F1 Insider. It's in German, so you've got to use Google Translate to actually get it through into English. But that is essentially what is being said. That they found out. I'm sure it says it here at some point in there that it was at the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend. But they covered it up. That is a fraud. So Bernie Ecclestone and the FIA are guilty of a fraud. Now, this case is being presented to a UK court where MASSA is claiming £64 million in compensation that the FIA and Formula One didn't take the appropriate action that year. MASSA's claiming that they should have avoided Singapore, and had they avoided Singapore, that would have resulted in him being the drivers' champion that season, and through not being that, that cost him £64 million in then career earnings, whether that would be bonuses and salary from that season, and then from that moment onwards, as then a world champion, every future contract and every future commercial rights deal that he signed. So that is how they've calculated the impact on him. That's entirely fraudulent. The bottom line is you do not just void an event because a competitor has cheated or a team has cheated. You just disqualify the cheats. In response to that, because this legal back and forth is played out, is what you get is barristers trying to defend those who committed the fraud. Ecclestone and the FIA, Ecclestone acting on behalf of Formula One, okay, so the three parties are liable, sought to cover it up, defrauding the world. All right, that's what they've done. They are the perpetrators here. They had an obligation to do the right thing, and they didn't. They purposefully sought to cover it up to protect the value of Formula One and protect the income to the FIA. That's a sports governing body, a global sports governing body that's not fit for purpose. All right, covering up corruption and fraud in their own sport is an act of fraud themselves. And yet they've got lawyers that will seek to represent them in the so-called justice system, because our court system here in the UK comes under the Ministry of Justice. And you don't actually achieve justice by having a staged argument by people wearing costumes, okay, and I will present the argument for the perpetrator and I will present the argument for the person harmed, and then we'll see where justice lies. No, that's not how you work justice out, because the harmed party isn't MASSA in this. What has actually taken place is a fraud, and that has caused harm, because what they were required to do was take the appropriate action, which is to disqualify the cheat, disqualify the beneficiary of that cheat, and then reset the position to actually all those who were impacted by that situation, compensate them for the harm that was done to them. All of those people have been neglected in this entire case, and yet this case is being brought before the UK courts. Now, this is the problem. So, this requirement for amicus curiae, a Latin term which means supposedly friend of the court, whereby if there is a court case happening, you can interject to say this case is clearly missing some key information pertinent to the case. So I am providing that to you in the interests of the notion of justice, because that is what this should be about. Justice. Otherwise, you, the British court system, the British judiciary, the Ministry of Justice is guilty of mis-selling the notion of justice through your fraudulent court system, where you've got these private operative lawyers, because Mr. Justice J is also a lawyer, acting up as a judge, now overseeing the conflict, the back and forth, directing it, taking up 3 days of valuable court time to play out this facade, to cream money to these barristers, to pretend that they're worth the 250 grand that each of them wants to claim out of making this argument for these corrupt parties that are bringing this wrong argument to protect these perpetrators. This is the state of the UK justice system. So this is what I've put in. The following court case is an entire fraud being perpetrated by corrupt operatives with ulterior motive. Case number KB 2024-000753, which is the MASSA case. I will come to breaking down Mr. Justice J's case notes. 224 points of bullshit. I'll break them down. The manner in which it is being framed and conducted seeks to pervert the course of justice. Now, that is my 20-minute timer. So let me just dismiss that. I'm going to carry on for a short while, and then I'll have to end this video because I'm mindful of how long these videos go on for. The manner in which this is being framed and conducted seeks to pervert the course of justice. Remember what justice is. Identifying what has happened and who has been impacted and how we right that. So what has happened is the government of the sport and those who benefit financially from the sport have corruptly covered up cheating in the sport to protect their brand value. They've got an obligation to everybody, all stakeholders, all competitors, all teams, all fans of the sport, to govern appropriately in accordance with the rules and regulations of the sport and to do the right thing, not enable cheats to prosper. And they covered it up for their own financial interests. And this is what this case is missing. So that is a perversion of the course of justice because there are harmed parties and they're not being identified. So this is a perversion of the course of justice. And what you have is a judge overseeing that and facilitating that, and two opposing teams of barristers that can't identify that. Corrupt to the core. So all involved. Corrupt Judge J and both legal teams, which include another UK judge, corrupt Judge Quest, are guilty of seeking to pervert the course of justice and hence are all guilty of acting in contempt of the integrity of the notion of court, undermining public confidence in the judicial system. That is key. If public confidence in the judicial system is undermined, the notion of rule of law is undermined, and that is catastrophic to any country. And our judiciary is putting that at risk through corrupt operators acting within our corrupt system. Filth. So this is the case. Felipe Massa, Formula One Management Limited, Bernie Ecclestone and the FIA. Now, this is a 21-page document. That is the first page of it. I am going to stop there and make a separate video. Page 2 is quite significant. It gets into some stuff that people aren't going to understand at this stage. It's taken me since Abu Dhabi 2021 to evolve my understanding to see what's really going on in this world. But that starts on page 2. Thanks for your time on this video.